Welcome to Conversations with, where I decide to channel whoever it is relevant for the day. And I would like to start today with my dead mother. I'm going to tap into my mother, and when I raise my hand, those are when I'm back in myself, in my channel. That is not me. That's me as Christina. And then when I put my hand down is when she's talking. Sometimes you'll see that our voices change a little bit, but it's not a possession. It is simply a channel. So here are the questions for my dead mother. Question number 1. What was it like for you when you died 35 years ago? The experience of death is one that we know to be deeply aligned with the center of us that is understanding and knowing that we are never leaving this place. And the other way of saying this is that wherever we go at death, we are already there. What happens is that all the levels of perception that exist on top of this reality, the physical body's experience, the mental body's experiences, all the sensitivities and sensations that come with the emotional body's experience, everything that comes with being incarnated goes away, and it makes it very easy to be able to sense the eternal. The eternal and the sensitivities that come on along with it, as you have pointed out to many of your students and clients before. The sensitivities are absolutely essential to being able to sense the eternal even before you die. For many people, the psychedelic experience or plant medicine experience makes it so that it is much easier for them to be able to actually sense the eternal. Even if they don't go all the way into the center, even if they are just on the outskirts, even if they are just closer to the center but still in the periphery, you will find that there are people who are going to that space on a regular basis, but they don't even know it because all their levels of perception have made it so that they are unable to sense this place. The center, as you call it, is the eternal still part of us. It is the closest point that we have in this reality to the 0 point field, the field in which everything arises. And in it, it is occupied with love and all of its creation. The center is always singing to us. We simply cannot hear because of the fact that it is clouded by our perception as human beings. In many ways, we can see the path of a human being being to create enough stillness within us, to integrate enough of ourselves, to quiet the voices inside in order to be able to hear the still, quiet center that sits at the middle of us. And that includes that love that we are washed away with in such a beautiful way when we pass from this human body. What would you say to people who are afraid of death? I would say that being afraid of death is one of the key parts of being human. You come into this life with guidelines. These guidelines are there in order to be able to make the stakes high enough such that you have enough resistance to stay in a human body. For many people, the fear of death is a huge portion of the resistance that makes it so that you can stay in a physical body. The unknowing, even if you know intellectually, even if you felt the still center that we've talked about, it doesn't matter so much because that fear of death or that understanding of death and the fear that you have of it is nothing compared to the resistance that this fear brings you. Resistance is necessary because without resistance, staying in a human body is a lot more difficult. We develop resistance in everything. We develop resistance whenever our conscious mind is awake and living in the world. When you go to sleep, you are experiencing a level of resistless reality, which is the closest thing possible to death that you have in this world, that you have access to while you still have a physical body. So, for those who are experiencing a fear of death, you have two options. One is you can continue to just say, this fear of death is simply the resistance that keeps me in a human body. Wonderful. Even if it's not an intellectual or mental thought, even if it is just a very underlying piece of resistance, that is okay. Or two, just like with all fears, you can use it as an opportunity and a spiritual practice. The spiritual practice of fear that you, Christina, teach your clients is one that is essential to your growth as a human being in order to become a fully human being. You are here to be able to integrate fears as one of the main categories of what you are doing. Therefore, addressing your fear of death makes it so that you can integrate more fully and you can become more resistless in a human body. Ultimately, we start in resistance in order to be able to stay in the human body, and then we convert that resistance to resistlessness. When we convert that to resistlessness, we recognize that we are still very sticky in our human bodies, but we are not tense, we are relaxed, and we are able to bring more of a channel of the divine into our human bodies. It becomes less a matter of force and the need for resistance or the fear of death, and more a choice to be in a human body. Thank you. That's very helpful. Can you tell us about any incarnations that you've had and what it was like and what was the choice to be able to like incarnate between now and then? Because I know that you are partially incarnated. You reincarnated a couple of times in the 35 years since you died, in my recollection. But yeah, I would love to know that. So when I left the human body, I was a deeply imbalanced being. I needed to be imbalanced because I needed to occupy a very strict polarity of the divine feminine and abundant and artistic expression. When I left the body, I had a period of recovering from that life and to reintegrating with the abundance and the balance that exists in the eternal, in that center. And then I needed to come back and I needed to exist as a grossly polarity in the masculine form. I had occupied the abundance of the feminine during this lifetime, and I needed to occupy the abundance or the structure of the masculine in order to be able to balance out my system. I had one reincarnation, which was very short, which served another purpose when I was in Paris, and I lived a very short life. And then I lived another life in a past time, in a parallel reality in which I was able to occupy the polarity of the masculine. You and everyone around me needed me to be in the polarity of the feminine during my life. It was a necessary balance, even if it was imbalanced within me. In the time since then, I have worked in my own progress to be able to balance myself out in all of my incarnations so that I do not need to necessarily occupy such a strong polarity, but also so that I can now integrate and become more fully a guide for you, your sister, and all of your grandchildren, which is a work that I find incredibly important in this world. You are not the only person that I appear to, and you're not the only person that I guide, but that is one of my main characteristics of what I am doing in this afterlife. Thank you. Okay, that's wonderful. I appreciate you today, and thank you all for joining us in this episode of Conversations with my dead mother. And if you have any questions for her, any questions that you would like to ask, or if you have suggestions, I also channel a number of different other entities such as Raphael and Archangel Michael and Jesus and all these sorts of people. So if you have any questions along those lines, I'll be happy to answer them in this episode of Conversations with. Please feel free to join me on social media at Play Conscious. On my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on TikTok at Christina Alchemist or somewhere else in the world, right here in Georgia. Thanks.